Look, think, make, not necessarily in that order, is the title of my talk. There are many words for seeing, the phenomenon of perception. Looking, glancing, peering, scanning. My favorite is the word notice, because when we're noticing, we're usually aware and witness to noticing, to seeing. We're looking, we're in a generative space. Noticing is the kind of seeing that naturally leads us to see more. On the screen now, on the left-hand side, is a photograph of John Baldessari in the 1970s, not so famous. On the right-hand side is John Baldessari, present day, now a very famous artist and photographer. Many of Baldessari's works lead us to question the very nature of how we see. In the 1970s, John asked a couple of his friends to visit a local police station, and there he asked them to describe to the police sketch artist their friend John. The resulting work is this story and also the drawings. Ask yourself right now, could you draw your BFF? Could he or she draw you? Turns out seeing is harder than we think, and we just might not see as much as we think we do. Mostly we don't question seeing. As babies, seeing just happens. We don't have to be taught how to see like we're taught to speak words or to write, later to read also. Seeing starts out simple enough, but there's so much to see, and we can't see it all at once. There's a lot we can learn about how to look. Our world has never been so visually stimulating and magnificent. Just imagine if you could see everything in this scene all at the same time. It would be rather overwhelming, right? Inventors and designers are producing new ways for us to see more. The Nike Hindsight glasses, they're really cool. If you're riding a bicycle, they have the lenses in them. They use high quality lenses like from a lighthouse, and it allows you to see things out of the corner of your eye that you would not be able to see otherwise. Keeps you safer. But not everybody's going to get Nike glasses. But there's one singular invention from this century that has given us all the opportunity and the possibilities to see more. Our cell phones, our smartphones. When the cameras came as standard equipment on our cell phones, it immediately made our cell phones our self phones, and we're seldom far from them. Once this happens, we see the world in a completely new way. And sometimes what we see is sort of scary, right? But we're all adapting, and children are learning at a very young age. It turns out that babies are now taking selfies, and many pet owners would like us to believe that their pets likewise can take selfies. But cell phones are also teaching us the importance of cropping. We're learning that what we leave outside the frame of the photograph is as important as what's included in the photo. And we're learning about how space works in photography. So while we truly do see more with our cell phones, they're also coaxing us away from looking and being fully engaged in one moment in time. We're all adapting to the idea that we can be one place, experiencing one thing, and at the very same time be in contact with several other people. But if you really think about it, we're dividing our attentions among these other people and other experiences, other places. But when we're really engaged and really paying attention to where we are right now, we can't really be in another place too. Oh, and just in case you thought I was picking only on young people, it's happening to everyone. It's absolutely human to respond to a new stimulus. And it's so easy for us to get distracted. It's so rich. Now that we hold this great distractor in the palms of our hands, we get caught up in virtual space and forget to be here now. But if there was suddenly a loud, unfamiliar noise in this room that you see on the screen, everyone would look up That's human too. At the noise of a plane engine when they were new, everyone would come out and look up into the sky to see the plane. Looking is infectious. Want to see how much, how easy? Go to any street corner, stand in a full view, and begin to look up into the sky. I think you'll probably stop traffic. A lot of what we look at, it's automatic. When we pass an accident, we can't not look. And sometimes when we might have wished we hadn't looked, we do anyway, and we get caught looking, being human. But a lot of our perceptual skills come in large part from our ancestors, our early ancestors. Necessarily, in order to survive, early humans constantly scanned the horizon. They never knew when something huge and awful would come along and eat them. This early survival adaptation is still part of our brain's hardwiring. And many fields today still require this kind of vigilant looking, followed by fast reactive response. It's a matter of survival in the case of, for instance, a pilot. And in other instances, it's challenging and fun. Video gamers are likewise using the very same skills, coming from the same place. There's a certain pleasure in being able to refine these skills, and let's face it, it's also human to want to win. But there's another kind of looking, as we often say, we're just looking. Shopping. Seconds after we go to finally get to the store in the department that we want to find, we know if it will have the right things for us. And once we find our spot, we focus in and get selective in what we see. We start flipping through the racks, and we don't notice what we don't like. Our vision is trained now to see only exactly what we're looking for. This is an artist who also shops, who's also just looking. And for 20 years, he's traveled all over the world taking photographs in every city. For instance, this is in Amsterdam, August 4th, 2012, from 2:30 to 3:30. He found all these people wearing this blue t-shirt in the same value, same in the yellow. In the next project, he's in Shanghai and finds all these young people with these funny t-shirts on with figures on them, or when it's raining in Shanghai. And this is one that I really like in Amsterdam. Within an hour and 10 minutes, he found this many people all dressed in blue jeans. Or in Rotterdam, in 4 hours, it took him 4 hours to find this many red jackets. In New York City, there must have been a sale because Abercrombie & Fitch, it took him an hour to find all of these images. And the pairs, the people working that just happened to go out for lunch here in Shanghai, it took the hour between 12 and 1, lunchtime. Like this photographer, the things that artists and designers pay particular attention to is what interests them. And these things, whether they're issues or phenomenons or form, become their work and their lives. Since the beginning, artists have made work to describe their experience in the world, to make sense of it all. In the 15th century, in every corner of the world, artists were painting. They were depicting scenes from stories from their religions, in some instances their rulers, and in some their everyday lives. They were using diverse methods and intentions. Artists were making their work, each one adding to the possibilities of their meaning and their subject matter. There are many examples of truly compelling work. But in this one particular instance, in Western art, there happened a startling development. Artists had already, in every part of the world, perfected brilliant color mixing for their paints. And the paintings were getting better and better. But one of the reasons that we study the Renaissance is for this one extraordinary shift that happened between paintings like this, and if you look, it's a very flat space. We don't really believe those stairs can be where they are. And then look at the difference from this image to this one. Wow, what happened? How did artists figure out this shift, this idea of perspective? How did it happen the first time? The science of seeing, called linear perspective, was discovered and demonstrated by Brunelleschi, an artist, an engineer, and an architect. He conducted a famous experiment on a street in Florence, and this building, the baptistry in San Giovanni, was perfect for his demonstration. And you can see that the sides of the building, it's not at a 90-degree angle, so you can see the sides at the same time you can see the front of the building, and that's important for his experiment. Linear perspective turns out to be a system, and it's a method that actually depicts the way our eyes actually see the world. Because of course we know that the side of the building, that the side isn't getting smaller as it goes back into space, but we know that's the way our eyes see it. So Brunelleschi took himself to the task of describing how it happened. So what did he do? He set himself up first across from the baptistry and set up a very small, simple panel that he painted. And he painted exactly what he saw. And then when he completed the painting, at his eye level, he drilled a little hole in the painting. And then had a mirror, which was really a polished silver, a polished piece of silver, and then he invited everyone to come, and he turned the painting so that it faced away from the viewer, and they looked first through the hole and could see the building across the street from them. And then he would raise the mirror in front of the painting, and suddenly the person was now seeing an exact replica of the building that was the painting. Fast forward to Darwin's time in the late 1800s. This is Arthur Harry Church, scientist and botanical artist. And he said, it's a lovely thing. Until one has drawn, it is impossible to understand. It makes me think that maybe all those photographs I'm taking with my iPhone and never look at again is maybe not really seeing to understand. These people, Harry Church and many others, were really drawing to see, to understand. And the kind of sustained looking that's required to render a flower like this in such great detail is an amazing feat, really. It's astonishing. But it also talks about how artists are scientists and scientists are artists. In these beautiful paintings, think about it, these are the late 1800s, and they're scrumptious paintings. The detail helped scientists understand how plants literally work. Here's a classroom of all men and women, which is always good to see, in the 1800s, and people like Elfie Spaulding were there. And here's an image of Elfie going off into the wilds, and she was one of the first plant pathologists. And so her drawings were not of the beautiful flowers, but they were of the diseases that can affect a plant, and scientists then could study them and help to talk about relationships. And then there are these two fine characters who were in the Canary Islands in the late 1800s. And you can see on the right their catches and then the drawings that they made as a result. There are also contemporary examples of artists and illustrators who study and make very detailed drawings and paintings of things that grow, of nature. On this artist's blog, she posts drawings of a variety of the tomatoes available from this one farm, this one company. Looking at the subtle relationships of the shapes of the tomatoes, and then second, adding the various colors of the heirloom tomatoes, makes us understand that tomatoes are very different from one another. In this two-step drawing process by Gary Garris, you also see the formal organization, the geometric forms underneath as structure that help the student and artist block in the figures of the leopard, or here of these dogs. Some artists carefully study one thing in the world and then translate what they've learned into another form as their work. Here, fashion designer Issey Miyake was inspired by origami in the folds. And now you see on the right-hand side this beautiful blouse. The part I really love is that it folds up flat for storage. And here a drawing from his sketchbook that's then designed and built into these dresses. Calatrava, an architect, an engineer, and an artist, began his idea here with the torso, drawing a figure and seeing how the torso twists. He then made a drawing, a sculpture, and a building. And it all began with the drawing of a torso of a man. Here's another page from his sketchbook alongside a much more highly rendered image drawing that's for the client. And here is the final result. Wow. In the next image, the drawing is the thing. This artist makes drawings of his friends, and he also investigates ambiguous space. He really understands perspective. You can see how deep that room is, and yet he flattens it at the very same time. He talks about this high contrast of the darkest darks and the lightest lights, and the composition depends on it. He also uses color to distance, to bring forward, and to distance back. Another drawing by the very same artist, in this instance, the surface is flattened. And if you look at this for a little bit, you'll begin to notice that this portrait is drawn looking straight down on a woman lying on a bed. That flatness now suddenly changes everything, and it's worth the time to look longer. Point of view, shifts of scale. Artists challenge us to look at the normal, the everyday, and depict it in unusual ways. Here's the sheer confoundedness of seeing this lifelike figure, but at such a grand scale. These are Charles Ray's Amazon women. He challenges us. In a similar way, and different, Giacometti's work also challenges us. Here the human form is abstracted and pulled apart. Walking through this exhibition, we can't help but be more intensely aware of our own sort of squatty human form. In direct contrast to this, some artists think about the small or the subtle. In this series of photographs by Julian Wolkenstein, he examines the idea of symmetry. In response, as we look at these images, we're checking to see, looking for the subtle differences. His project is talking about that the more symmetrical the face, the more attractive or beautiful we are thought to be. And in this image, this photographer took the photograph that sends us looking like we're at a tennis match. We have to go look at one side to the other to compare what ends up being these very tiny differences, the small differences that catch our eye. In this next work, a foundation art student at Otis was looking into the everyday and into seeing. And she noticed that when she saw crows out on the lawn on the campus, that they just really looked like cutout silhouettes. And so for her project, she chose 5 or 6 silhouettes of crows, and she cut them out with a stencil out of cardboard and then sprayed them black, and then pasted a tongue depressor on the back and stuck them all the way through the lawn. The day of her opening of her critique, everyone was talking about this crow infestation at Otis. What would the school do if these crows stayed? And for months, occasionally, someone would say, do you remember when we had all those crows? It was really hard not to tell them that it was a work of art. Sometimes works are huge endeavors. The idea, perhaps very simple to come to, the execution, very long. In this work, Damon Ortega's Cosmic Thing, the idea might have come really quickly to him. The execution took a very long time. Damon imagines this not as a sculpture, but as a 3-dimensional drawing. And all the pieces and parts are spread out for us to see using cables and wires, as though we need to understand what the individual parts and the process of the assembly line might be. I can imagine that when we walk outside, we look at our cars differently. All of a sudden, we see all of those parts spread out for us. And in contrast to works like this that take a very long time to make and a long time to see, since the beginning of art making, many artists have practiced a different way of looking, where the actual time of executing the work is very fast in comparison to the very long state of looking and perceiving. These artists demonstrate the incredible skill of seeing that is so efficient and effective that they can effortlessly translate their view into a drawing or a painting. So fast these artists cross over and through the page. Looking at the work, we may spend more time looking than it actually took to make it. In contemporary fashion sketches, we see a similar economy of means. A few moves of a brush, color, attitude, style. So little specific detail, so much to see. The artist's challenge, what's the smallest gesture I can make to communicate this chair or this one, so quiet and rich? I chose the title, Look, Think, Make, not necessarily in that order, to talk about the fine and complex relationships between looking, thinking, and making. And the second part of the title, not necessarily in that order, reminds us that looking and thinking, imagining, considering, planning, revising, idea, process, making things again, all of this can happen in any order in the process of making a work of art. And the final work holds them all. The resulting artwork is the document of the artist's studio practice. This last piece is an elegant portrait of how we read the artist's thoughts when we look carefully at their work. In this piece, artist and educator Kristen Foster was interested in flatness. This work is the result of one afternoon in her studio. It was raining. Flatness. Kristen decided to make 3D objects from this flat pieces of paper. She downloaded the patterns. And then she made them, these paper objects forms. And after making them, she squished them. She squished them under a big thick piece of glass. And when they were adequately squished, she sprayed them blue. And then she popped them back up again and returned them to their three-dimensional form. The resulting works, these quiet, lovely pieces, the paper, the color, the process, the form, all have their part in holding her investigation of flatness, thinking, making, seeing. Thank you.